Yoon-ji-hai pressed her back against the cold metal wall of the storage room. Her heart beat so fast she could hear it in her ears. The sounds of heavy footsteps moved past the door. She held her breath until they faded away. The trade station. Nexus 7 was usually a safe place. Ships from all over the galaxy came here to buy and sell goods. No fighting was allowed, no weapons. But today was different. Today, everything had changed. G-High looked at the small data device in her shaking hands. It was no bigger than her thumb, but it held secrets that could destroy the galaxy's government. The alien who gave it to her was dead now, shot down in the main corridor just 20 minutes ago. She closed her eyes and remembered his words. "Tell them what we did," he had whispered as blue blood leaked from his mouth. "Tell them about the vote. Tell them about the humans. The humans. Her people." Ji-Hai had been born on Earth but spent most of her life traveling between worlds as a journalist. She wrote stories about different alien cultures and how they lived together in peace. At least, that's what she thought they were doing. Heavy boots stomped past the door again. Ji-Hai knew they were looking for her. The Council's security forces had sealed off the entire station. No ships in or out. They wanted that data device back, and they wanted her dead. She pressed a button on the device and held it close to her ear. The recording started to play. Emergency session of the Galactic Council, date 2387.156. All members present. Chairman Vorthak Prime speaking. The voice was deep and cold, like grinding stones. "We gathered today to address the human problem. Our scientists have studied them for 10 cycles. Their population grows too fast. Their technology advances too quickly. Worst of all, they influence other species with their strange ideas about equality and freedom." Ji-Hai's blood turned cold. She had heard Vorthak Prime speak before at public ceremonies. He always talked about peace and cooperation between species. But this voice sounded different. Angry, hateful. The recording continued. "The humans call themselves peaceful, but look how they spread. Every world they touch changes. Other species begin to question our authority. They ask for rights, they demand representation. This cannot continue." Another voice joined in, female and high-pitched like a bird song. "What do you propose, Chairman?" "Complete elimination. We have developed a biological weapon that targets only human DNA. It will look like a natural plague. The other species will thank us for protecting them. All in favor?" The recording filled with voices. "Aye." "Agreed." "Yes." "Approved." Every single member of the council voted to kill her entire species. G-High-S hands shook so hard she almost dropped the device. 6 billion humans lived on Earth, millions more on colony worlds. The council wanted to murder them all. The recording went on for another hour. They talked about timing and methods. They discussed which human worlds to hit first. They planned to blame it on human scientists experimenting with dangerous diseases. They had already started killing human exploration teams and making it look like accidents. Footsteps approached the door again. This time they stopped. Ji-Hai heard voices speaking in the Saurian language. She didn't understand the words, but the tone was clear. They were getting closer. She needed help. But who could she trust? The Council controlled most of the galaxy's military. They had agents everywhere. Even the station's security worked for them. Then she remembered Captain Lee Daeho. His cargo ship was docked on level 7. She had bought passage with him before when she needed to travel quietly. He was a smuggler, which meant he didn't ask questions, and he didn't like authority figures. Most importantly, he was human. G-High crept to the door and listened. The footsteps had moved away. She opened it slowly and looked out. The corridor was empty, but she could hear shouting from other parts of the station. They were searching every room. She ran toward the lift that would take her to the docking levels. Her soft shoes made no sound on the metal floor. As she reached the lift, the doors opened. A tall Saurian guard stepped out, his reptilian eyes scanning the area. G-High dove behind a cargo container, just as his gaze swept over her hiding spot. The guard's forked tongue flicked out, tasting the air. Could he smell her fear? After what felt like hours, the guard moved on. Jihai waited until she couldn't hear his claws clicking on the floor. Then she slipped into the lift. She pressed the button for level 7 and prayed it would work. The lift lurched and began to descend. Level 7 smelled like fuel and engine oil. Cargo ships of all sizes filled the docking bays. She found Lee's ship, the Lucky Star, in Bay 94. It was an old human freighter, built for speed rather than comfort. Perfect for running from trouble. She hammered on the airlock door. "Lee, it's Jihai. I need help." The door opened to reveal Captain Lee Dae-ho. He was a man in his 40s with graying hair and suspicious eyes. "What are you doing here?" "I heard the station's locked down. They're trying to kill me," she said, pushing past him into the ship. "And they want to kill every human in the galaxy." Lee raised an eyebrow. "That's quite a claim. Got any proof?" She held up the data device. "Everything's on here. The Council voted to exterminate humanity. They have a weapon. They're going to start using it soon." Lee's expression changed from suspicious to serious. "Show me." She played part of the recording. As Chairman Vorthak's voice filled the ship's small cabin, Lee's face grew darker. When it finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "Son of a bitch," he finally said. "I knew something was wrong. 3 human survey teams disappeared last month. The Council said it was equipment failures." "It was murder," Jihai said. "They're killing us off slowly while they prepare the main weapon." Alarms began blaring throughout the station. Red lights flashed in the corridors. Over the intercom, a voice announced, "Attention all personnel. The station is now under Council military control. Report any suspicious activity immediately. Lee." Moved to his pilot's seat and started the engine warm-up sequence. "Looks like we're leaving early. Strap yourself in." "Where are we going?" Jihai asked, buckling into the co-pilot's chair. "First, we get off this station before they lock down the docking bays. Then we figure out how to warn everyone." He paused, looking at her seriously. "This recording, it's real. I watched the alien who gave it to me die for it," she said. "He was just a clerk in the Council chambers. He heard the whole thing and couldn't live with staying quiet. Brave, little guy." Lee's fingers flew over the controls. "Ready for launch." The ship lifted off from the docking bay just as security doors began closing throughout the station. They were barely through the opening when it sealed behind them. "Lucky." "Start a station control," Lee said into his radio. "We're experiencing engine problems and need to dock for repairs." "Negative, Lucky Star. Return to bay immediately by order of Council security." Lee switched off the radio. "They can order all they want. We're not going back." 2 Council patrol ships appeared on their sensors, moving to intercept. Lee pushed the engines harder, but the patrol ships were faster and newer. "They're going to catch us," Jihai said, watching the ships close the distance. "Not if I can help it." Lee's ship dove toward Nexus 7's moon, using its gravity to pick up speed. "There's an asteroid field on the other side. If we can reach it, we might lose them in the rocks." The patrol ships fired warning shots. Bright energy beams flashed past the Lucky Star's windows. "This is Council Patrol 7. Stop your engines and prepare to be boarded." Instead, Lee pushed the ship even harder. They rounded the moon and plunged into a field of spinning rocks. Lee flew between the asteroids like he was born to it, twisting and turning through gaps barely wider than his ship. The patrol ships followed. But they were built for open space, not obstacle courses. One clipped an asteroid and spun out of control. The other fell behind, unable to match Lee's crazy flying dot. When they finally emerged from the asteroid field, they were alone. "Well," Lee said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "That was exciting. Now what do we do with this information?" Jihai looked at the data device. "We tell everyone, every human world, every alien species that will listen. The galaxy needs to know what their government is planning. That's going to make us the most wanted people in Council space." "Good," Jihai said. "Maybe it's time someone stood up to them." Lee set course for the edge of the system. Behind them, Nexus 7 grew smaller in the distance. Ahead lay the vast galaxy, full of worlds that didn't yet know their peaceful government was planning the biggest murder in history. But they were about to find out. The Council's warships appeared over Earth just as the sun rose over Asia. Massive vessels that blotted out the morning light hung in the sky like dark clouds. President Chen stood in the Situation Room watching the displays that showed similar scenes over Mars, Titan, and every other human world. 18 battle fleets, reported Admiral Harrison. They're not even trying to hide it anymore. Chairman Vorthak's face appeared on screens across Earth. His reptilian features looked cold and satisfied. People of Earth, he said, your leaders have been spreading lies about the Galactic Council. These lies end today. Surrender yourselves for processing, and your deaths will be quick. Chen muted the transmission. Processing, she said bitterly. He makes genocide sound like paperwork. But humanity was not defenseless. Commander Kim Tae-woo had spent the last week preparing for this moment. Human defense ships might be outnumbered 100 to 1, but they had advantages the Council didn't expect. All ships, this is Kim Tae-woo, he broadcast on encrypted channels. Remember what we practiced. Hit fast, hit hard, and get out. Don't try to fight fair, they have bigger guns, but we know these systems better than they do. The first battle began over Mars. Council ships moved in standard formation, expecting the human fleet to meet them head-on. Instead, the human ships scattered like leaves in the wind. Some hid behind Mars's moons, others dove into the asteroid belt. A few simply disappeared. Using stealth technology the Council didn't know humans possessed. When the Council ships came looking for them, the humans struck from every direction at once. Missiles came from behind asteroids. Energy weapons fired from the shadows of moons. The Council's massive battleships were powerful, but they were designed to fight other big ships, not swarms of smaller vessels attacking from all angles. In the first hour, humanity destroyed 3 Council battleships and damaged a dozen more, but the victory came at a terrible cost. For every Council ship they destroyed, humanity lost 5 of their own. We can't keep this up, Kim told his fleet commanders. We're buying time, but we can't win a straight fight. Meanwhile, far from the battle zones, Dr. So-min worked desperately in a hidden lab on Granite Crusher's flagship. The rock-like commander had provided her with everything she needed, including samples of the biological weapon that Ambassador Flux had smuggled out of Council storage. It's worse than I thought, she told the assembled resistance leaders via secure communication. This weapon doesn't just kill humans. It's designed to evolve. After the first phase, it will mutate to target any species that has had close contact with humans. How many species is that? Asked Melody Songweaver from her hidden location on No. Etheria Prime. At least 40, So-min replied. Maybe more. The Council isn't just planning to kill humanity. They want to eliminate every species that might oppose them in the future. This news spread through the resistance like wildfire. Species that had been neutral suddenly realized they were also targets. The deep swimmers' aquatic worlds contained human research stations. The bloomers had been sharing agricultural technology with human colonies for decades. Even some saurian worlds had mixed populations. The Council has declared war on half the galaxy, Granite Crusher rumbled. This cannot stand. But even as more species joined the resistance, the Council's extermination plan moved forward. On remote human colonies, the first plague ships began their deadly work. Entire settlements went dark within hours. The weapon was everything the Council had promised: swift, silent, and seemingly natural. The news reached Earth just as the orbital battle was reaching its climax. President Chen watched the casualty reports pour in and made the hardest decision of her life. All human ships, all human colonies, she broadcast on every available channel. Condition Omega is now in effect. Condition Omega was humanity's last resort. A plan so desperate that they had hoped never to use it. Instead of fighting the Council's superior forces directly, humanity would do what they did best. They would adapt, survive, and find another way. Across the galaxy, human settlements began to evacuate, But they weren't just running away. Every human ship that fled carried something precious, the complete cultural and technological heritage of their species. Art, music, literature, scientific discoveries, everything that made humanity unique, was copied and distributed across thousands of vessels. If they're going to kill our bodies, Chen had told her advisors, they won't kill our souls. The evacuation was a masterpiece of coordination. Human ships scattered in every direction, carrying refugees to hidden bases, allied worlds, and the far reaches of space. Some would not survive the journey, but many would, and with them humanity would endure. But not everyone could run. On Earth, millions of people chose to stay and fight. They knew they would probably die, but they also knew their sacrifice would buy time for the evacuation ships. Kim Tae-woo made the same choice. As the evacuation proceeded, he led the remaining defense fleet in increasingly desperate attacks against the Council forces. His ships were falling one by one, but each battle cost the Council time and resources they couldn't afford to lose. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "the last evacuation ship has cleared Earth's orbit." Kim looked out at his home world one last time. The blue and green planet where humanity had been born looked peaceful from space, but he knew that Council invasion troops were already landing. "All ships," he said quietly. "It's been an honor serving with you. Final strike begins now." The remaining human ships turned toward the largest Council battleship and accelerated to ramming speed. It was suicide, but it was also something the Council didn't expect. The massive explosions destroyed the Council's flagship and damaged 3 other capital ships. Chairman Vorthak watched the destruction from his command ship and snarled with rage. "Enough games," he ordered. "Deploy the weapon on all human worlds simultaneously. I want this species extinct by tomorrow." But the weapon deployment didn't go as planned. On every world where the Council tried to release their biological plague, they found something unexpected. The evacuation hadn't been complete. Small groups of humans had remained behind, hidden in underground shelters and remote locations. These weren't soldiers or government officials. They were volunteers, doctors, teachers, engineers, and ordinary citizens who had chosen to stay for one reason: to help their alien neighbors. When the plague hit, these humans emerged from their shelters not to save themselves, but to help the alien populations that were also affected. The weapon's second phase was already beginning, mutating to target species that had been in contact with humans, but where the Council expected to find only death, they found something else entirely. Humans sharing their limited medical supplies with sick aliens. Humans carrying alien children to safety, while their own people died around them. Humans working alongside alien doctors to treat patients of every species, even as the plague consumed their own bodies. The galaxy watched these acts of sacrifice through hidden cameras and secret broadcasts. They saw humans dying to save aliens, sharing their last food with strangers, using their final breaths to comfort the afraid and wounded. On Etheria Prime, Melody Songweaver stood before the planetary assembly and spoke with tears in her bright eyes. "My human friends are dying to save us," she said. "While their own species faces extinction, they choose to help others survive. How can we call these people monsters? How can we let them die alone?" The Etherian collective voted unanimously to openly join the resistance. Their warships, built for speed and grace, began attacking Council forces wherever they found them. Other species followed within hours. The Terran Coalition, the Deep Swimmers, the Bloomers, and dozens of smaller civilizations declared war on the Council. But it might have been too late. Even as the galaxy rose up against the Council, the biological weapon continued its deadly work. Human populations were falling rapidly, and the mutated version was beginning to affect allied species as well. In her hidden laboratory, Dr. So-min made a discovery that changed everything. The weapon had a flaw, a single point of failure that could potentially stop it. But exploiting that flaw would require something that seemed impossible: voluntary cooperation from infected humans. The virus uses human genetic markers as a template for its mutations, she explained to the resistance leaders. If we can convince it that humans are not the enemy but rather the cure, we might be able to reverse the entire process. What do you need? asked Granite Crusher. Living human volunteers. People who are already infected but still conscious. They would need to undergo a process that would be extremely painful and probably fatal. But their sacrifice could save everyone, human and alien alike. The call went out through the resistance networks. They needed humans who were willing to die in agony for the chance to save the galaxy. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Thousands of infected humans volunteered. Men and women from every human world, all ready to give their lives for the slim hope of stopping the plague. Among them was Captain Lee Dae-ho, whose ship had been caught by Council forces while evacuating civilians. "I've been a smuggler and a rebel my whole life," he said from his isolation cell on a Council prison ship. "This is the first chance I've had to be a hero." Dr. Park So-min stood on the balcony of the Etherian Science Institute, watching the twin suns set over the crystal city below. The bird-like Etherians had built their capital in the trees, with buildings that looked like giant nests made of metal and glass. She had been working here for 2 years, helping develop new medical treatments that could work for both human and alien biology. Her peaceful evening ended when her communication device started beeping urgently. The message was marked Priority 1, which meant it came from Earth's government. She opened it and felt the blood drain from her face. All diplomatic personnel returned to Earth immediately. Humanity under threat. Do not trust Council communications. Before she could process this fully, her device beeped again. This time it wasn't an official message. The sender was listed as unknown, but when she played it, she heard a human woman's voice. "My name is Yoon Ji-hee. I'm a journalist. If you're receiving this, you're human and you need to hear this immediately." The message continued with audio that made So-min's legs weak. Council members discussing the extermination of humanity, like they were talking about the weather. She played it 3 times to make sure she wasn't dreaming. Each time the words hit harder. They were going to kill everyone. Her parents on Earth, her brother's family on Mars colony, every human she had ever known or loved. "Dr. Park?" The voice belonged to Melody Songweaver, her Etherian research partner. The bird-like alien stood in the doorway, her feathers ruffled with concern. "You look unwell. Has something happened?" So-min looked at her friend. They had worked together for 2 years. Melody had saved her life during a lab accident. They had shared meals and stories about their families. Could she trust her with this terrible secret? "Melody," she said slowly, "what do you know about secret council meetings?" The Etherian's bright blue feathers darkened. "What kind of meetings?" So-min played the recording. As Chairman Vorthak's voice filled the air, Melody's feathers turned from blue to deep black, a sign of extreme distress in her species. "This cannot be real," Melody whispered when it ended. "I wish it wasn't." So-min showed her the priority message from Earth. "My government is calling all humans home. They know something's wrong." Melody was quiet for a long time, her feathers slowly shifting from black to gray. "My mother sits on the council," she finally said. "She represents the Etherian collective. If this vote really happened, she would have been there. What are you going to do?" "I'm going to ask her." Melody's voice was firm despite her obvious fear. "If my own mother voted to murder an entire species, I need to know." While So-min packed her belongings, news started coming in from across the galaxy. The recording that Ji-hai had broadcast was spreading faster than anyone could stop it. Every communication network carried the shocking audio. Alien worlds were demanding answers from their council representatives. On the Terran Coalition worlds, the rocky humanoids called emergency assemblies. Their leader, Granite Crusher, gave a speech that was broadcast across their territory. "If this is true, the Council has betrayed everything we believed in. No species should fear for their existence simply because they are different." But the Council fought back quickly. Chairman Vorthak appeared on all major networks within hours. "These recordings are clever fabrications created by human extremists," he announced. "Humanity seeks to turn the galaxy against its rightful government. Do not be fooled by their lies." So-min watched his speech from Lee's ship, where she had been picked up at a remote landing field. Ji-hai and Lee had already rescued 3 other humans from various alien worlds. Each had similar stories: sudden deportations, cancelled trade agreements, and growing hostility from Council-loyal species. "He's good," Ji-hai said, watching Vorthak's performance. "He sounds sincere." "People want to believe him," added Han Woo-jin, a tech specialist they had picked up from a mining station. "It's easier than accepting that their government is evil." But some aliens weren't convinced by Vorthak's denials. On Etheria Prime, Melody Songweaver stood before a crowd of her people and spoke words that would be remembered forever. "I have worked with humans for 2 years. I have seen their kindness, their curiosity, their desire to help others. If our council voted to exterminate them, then our council is wrong. I call for a full investigation." The crowd of Etherians erupted in song, their way of showing approval. Within hours, the Etherian collective announced it was withdrawing its representatives from council sessions until the investigation was complete. Other species began to follow. The aquatic deep swimmers recalled their ambassador. The plant-like bloomers closed their borders to council ships. Even some member species of the Saurian Empire started asking difficult questions. Commander Kim Tae-woo received the emergency recall message while leading a training exercise on the edge of human space. His small fleet of defense ships was practicing formation flying when every human vessel in the galaxy got the same order: return to homeworlds immediately. Prepare for possible siege. Kim was a career military officer who had spent 20 years keeping peace on the frontier. He had fought pirates and rescued stranded ships, but he had never prepared for war against the galaxy's government. The journey back to Earth took 3 days. During that time, Kim monitored Council military communications. What he heard confirmed his worst fears. Battle fleets were being moved into position around human systems. Weapons that had been stored for decades were being loaded onto ships. Most frightening of all, medical ships were being deployed with crews trained in biological warfare. "Sir," his communications officer said, "I'm picking up chatter about something called Project Cleansing. They're talking about deployment schedules and contamination protocols." Kim felt sick. "How long until we reach Earth?" 18 hours, sir." "Push the engines harder. I don't think we have 18 hours. On Earth, President Chen was meeting with the world's leaders in an emergency session. The leaked recording had reached every human colony within 12 hours. Panic was starting to spread, but Chen knew panic would get them all killed. "We have maybe days before they act," she told the assembly. "Our choices are simple: hide, fight, or die. I propose we choose something else entirely." "What?" asked the representative from Mars Colony. "We tell the truth. Not just about the Council's plan, but about everything. Every peaceful contact we've made, every time we've helped another species, every friendship we've built, we remind the galaxy who we really are." The plan was ambitious and dangerous. Instead of preparing for war, humanity would prepare for the biggest public relations campaign in galactic history. Every human ship would carry the complete records of human-alien cooperation. Every colony would broadcast their stories of peaceful coexistence. They would flood the galaxy with proof that humans were not the monsters the Council claimed they were. Meanwhile, Ji-hai's small group had grown into something larger. Ships from across the galaxy were joining them, not just human vessels but alien traders and diplomats who refused to believe the Council's lies. Granite Crusher himself arrived in a massive Terran Coalition battleship. "My people have decided," the rock-like commander announced. "If the Council wants to murder an entire species based on fear and lies, then the Council has become our enemy, too." But even as the resistance grew, the Council's forces were moving. Patrol ships began interdicting human vessels. Trade routes to human worlds were quietly blockaded. On remote stations, humans started disappearing. The biological weapon was ready. The deployment ships were in position. All that remained was for Chairman Vorthak to give the final order. So-Min worked frantically in the Lucky Star's small lab, trying to understand the weapon from the technical data Ji-hai had recovered. What she found terrified her more than the extermination plan itself. It's not just a weapon, she told the others, it's designed to mutate. After it kills all the humans, it will change and start targeting other species. The Council isn't just planning to commit genocide. They're planning to control the entire galaxy through fear of the plague. Can you stop it? Lee asked. I don't know, maybe. But I'd need samples of the actual weapon to develop a cure. Then we'll get you some, Kim said. His military training was taking over. We identify their weapon storage facility and take what we need. That's suicide, Wu Jin protested. Those facilities are heavily guarded. Maybe, Kim replied, but doing nothing is definitely suicide. As they planned their desperate mission, news came that changed everything. On the Council homeworld, a junior member of the Photonic Assembly, beings made of pure energy, had defected. Ambassador Flux contacted the Resistance with a message that made their blood run cold. The weapon deploys in 48 hours. The target is not just Earth, but 17 human colonies and any alien world that has offered them sanctuary. The Council has decided that any species that supports humanity must be eliminated as well. The Resistance realized they weren't just fighting for humanity anymore. They were fighting for the soul of the galaxy itself. And they were almost out of time. Ambassador Flux materialized in the Resistance Command Center, their energy form flickering with distress. The being of pure light had risked everything to bring them the most important intelligence yet. The Council knows about your cure research, Flux said, their voice like electrical static. Chairman Vorthak is preparing to launch the final phase. Every world that has harbored humans will be destroyed completely. No more selective plagues. Total orbital bombardment. Dr. Somin looked up from her work with exhausted eyes. She had been working for 36 hours straight, trying to perfect the process that could turn infected humans into living vaccines. How long do we have? 12 hours at most. The bombardment fleets are already moving into position. Granite. Crusher's rocky fist slammed into the table. 12 hours is not enough time to test your cure. Then we test it while we use it, Somin said firmly. We can't wait for perfect conditions. Either it works or we all die anyway. The desperate plan began immediately. Across the galaxy, infected humans were brought to hidden medical stations. Each volunteer knew they had little chance of survival. The process Somin had developed would flood their bodies with modified versions of the plague virus, essentially turning them into weapons against the disease itself. Captain Lee Dae-ho was among the first volunteers. The Council had captured his ship, but the Resistance had rescued him from the prison transport. Now he lay on a medical table watching alien doctors prepare the injection that would either save the galaxy or kill him in agony. You sure about this, Doc? He asked So-min as she checked the equipment one final time. No, she admitted. I'm not sure about anything anymore. But I know that doing nothing guarantees we all lose. Lee nodded and closed his eyes. Then let's roll the dice. The injection went into his arm smoothly. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then Lee's body began to convulse. His temperature spiked. The monitors around him went crazy as his immune system began fighting a war against itself. It's working, So-min whispered, watching the readouts. His body is producing antibodies against the original plague and all its mutations. But the process was brutal. Lee screamed as his body burned with fever. His skin turned pale, then gray, then almost transparent. For 6 hours he hovered between life and death while his transformed blood fought against the disease that had already killed billions. Similar scenes played out on dozens of hidden stations. Of the first 100 volunteers, only 12 survived the initial process. But those 12 had become something unprecedented, living factories that could produce a cure for the plague. The news reached Chairman Vorthak just as his bombardment. Fleets were preparing to fire on Earth. His reptilian features twisted with rage as he read the intelligence reports. They're turning the weapon against itself, he snarled to his generals. The humans are always adapting, always finding new ways to survive. This is exactly why they must be destroyed. Sir, one of his officers said hesitantly, our own troops, are beginning to show symptoms. The mutated plague is spreading to saurian populations as well. Vorthak's eyes narrowed. This was not part of the plan. The weapon was supposed to remain stable after eliminating the humans, but it seemed to be evolving beyond their control. It doesn't matter, he decided. We proceed with the bombardment. Better to burn infected worlds than let this disease spread further. But even as Vorthak gave his orders, something unexpected was happening across the galaxy. The cure that infected humans were producing wasn't just helping other humans. It was working on alien species too. Onetheria Prime, Melody Songweaver, had been caring for sick human refugees when she began showing symptoms of the mutated plague. Her blue feathers had turned black with disease and she was barely able to stand. But when doctors gave her blood serum from one of the cured humans, her condition began to improve within hours. It's not species-specific, she reported to the resistance leaders. The cure works on everyone. The humans have created something that can save the entire galaxy. The news spread faster than the plague itself. Worlds that had been preparing for death suddenly had hope. The cure was limited. They didn't have enough cured humans to treat everyone. But it proved that survival was possible. More importantly, it proved something else. The galaxy watched as humans continued to volunteer for the agonizing cure process, knowing that most would die. They saw humans giving their blood to save alien strangers, often when they didn't have enough to save themselves. On the mining world of Kepler 442, a human engineer named Park Min-ho had survived the cure process. As Council bombardment ships approached the planet, he was working in the evacuation center, helping load alien families onto the last refugee ships. "Sir," an alien worker said to him, "there's only room for one more person on this ship. You should take it. You have the cure in your blood. You're too valuable to lose." Park looked at the aliens' children, huddled together and afraid. "Take care of them," he said, lifting the youngest child into the ship. "That's more valuable than anything in my blood." The ship launched just as the Council bombardment began. Park watched it disappear into space, carrying alien families to safety, while he remained behind on a doomed world. He died when the orbital weapons fired, but his blood samples had already been sent to resistance labs across the galaxy. Commander Kim Tae-woo had survived the battle over Earth and was now leading guerrilla attacks against Council forces throughout human space. His small fleet couldn't win battles, but they could rescue survivors and protect evacuation convoys. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving a transmission from the Council flagship. Chairman Vorthak wants to speak with you. Directly." Kim activated the communication channel. Vorthak's cold reptilian face appeared on the screen. "Commander Kim," the chairman said, "your resistance is pointless. We will burn every world that harbors humans. We will hunt down every ship that carries your people. Your species will be extinct within days." "Maybe," Kim replied calmly, "but we won't go quietly, and we won't go alone." "What do you mean?" Kim smiled grimly. "Check your casualty reports, Chairman. Look at how many Council troops have become infected. The plague you created is killing your people too. The only cure comes from human volunteers. How long do you think your own forces will keep following orders when they realize we're the only ones who can save them?" Vorthak's expression changed. The reports were already coming in. Saurian worlds were reporting massive infections. Other Council species were beginning to show symptoms. The weapon they had created to control the galaxy was now threatening to destroy it. "We offer you a choice," Kim continued. "End this war now and we'll share the cure freely with everyone, including your people. Continue fighting, and we'll all die together. Humans, Saurians, and everyone else." For the first time in his life, Chairman Vorthak felt genuine fear. The humans had turned his perfect weapon into a tool for unity instead of destruction. Every species in the galaxy now needed their help to survive. But Vorthak had spent too many years building his empire to give up now. "I would rather see the galaxy burn than bow to humans," he snarled, cutting the transmission. The final battle began within hours. Council forces moved to attack every known resistance base simultaneously. They couldn't control the plague anymore, but they could still eliminate the source of the cure. If all the cured humans died, the galaxy would die with them, but at least humanity wouldn't inherit the ruins. On Earth, the last human city was surrounded by council troops. President Chen stood in the rubble of what had been the capital, surrounded by a few thousand survivors. They had fought for every street, every building, but they were almost out of ammunition and completely out of hope. "Madam President," her aide said quietly, "we're receiving surrender terms from the council forces." "Let me guess," Chen replied. "Unconditional surrender and execution of all human leadership." "Yes, ma'am." Chen looked at her people. Soldiers, civilians, children, all waiting for her decision. They could surrender and die, or keep fighting and die. Neither option would save humanity. Then her radio crackled with an unexpected transmission. "Earth. Command, this is Melody Songweaver of the Etherian Collective. Reinforcements are on the way." Chen looked up at the sky and saw something beautiful. Ships were dropping out of hyperspace. Not just Etherian vessels, but ships from dozens of species. The Terran Coalition's massive battleships, the graceful cruisers of the deep swimmers, even small civilian craft from worlds she had never heard of. "And the entire galaxy is coming," Melody's voice continued. "Everyone who has been saved by the human cure, everyone who has seen human sacrifice. We are all here to return the favor." The final battle for Earth lasted 18 hours. Council forces were experienced and well-equipped, but they were fighting the combined fleets of half the galaxy. More importantly, they were fighting for a cause that even their own troops no longer believed in. As the battle raged above, Dr. So-Min worked frantically in an underground bunker, trying to synthesize enough cure for everyone who needed it. She had figured out how to mass-produce the serum using samples from the surviving volunteers, but the process was slow and complex. "How much more time do you need?" asked Han Wu-jin, who was monitoring the battle reports. The surrender came not with fanfare, but with a simple transmission from the council flagship. Chairman Vorthak's voice, once so commanding and cold, now carried the weight of defeat and desperation. "This is Chairman Vorthak to all resistance forces. The Galactic Council requests terms for ceasefire." President Chen stood in the ruins of Earth's capital, surrounded by representatives from dozens of species who had come to defend humanity. The irony wasn't lost on her. The same aliens the council claimed humans were corrupting had risked everything to save them. "What terms?" she asked simply. "Medical assistance for infected council populations. In exchange, we will cease all hostile operations and release all human prisoners." Melody Songweaver, her blue feathers bright with recovered health, looked at Chen with curious eyes. "What will you tell him?" Chen was quiet for a moment. The easy answer would be to demand Vorthak's surrender, his trial, his execution. The man had orchestrated the near extinction of her species. He deserved whatever fate awaited war criminals. But that wasn't the human way. "We accept," Chen said into her communicator. "Medical teams are already being dispatched to assist all infected populations, including council worlds." The silence that followed lasted several seconds. Finally, Vorthak's voice returned, smaller somehow. "You would help us? After everything we've done?" "That's what humans do," Chen replied. "We help." Dr. So-Min coordinated the largest medical relief operation in galactic history. Human volunteers, many still recovering from the cure process themselves, traveled to worlds that had been trying to kill them just days before. They worked alongside alien doctors, sharing their blood and their knowledge freely. On the Saurian homeworld, Park So-Min found herself treating Chairman Vorthak himself. The proud reptilian leader lay in a hospital bed, his scales gray with infection, watching as a human doctor prepared the injection that would save his life. "Why?" he asked as she inserted the needle. "I tried to exterminate your entire species. Why save me?" So-Min checked his vital signs as the cure began to work. "Because that's not who we are. You judged humanity by your own standards. You assumed we would seek revenge because that's what you would do. But we're not you. Your people are either saints or fools," Vorthak muttered. Maybe both, So-Min admitted. But we're alive, and so are you. That has to count for something. The trials began 6 months later. The new Galactic Assembly, formed from the species that had united during the Resistance, established courts to judge the crimes committed during the attempted genocide. But the trials were unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Humans testified not just about the crimes against them, but about the systemic oppression the Council had used against smaller species for centuries. They called for justice, but not vengeance. They demanded punishment but focused on rehabilitation rather than retribution. "We could have let you all die from the plague," Commander Kim Tae-woo testified at Vorthak's trial. "We could have used our cure as a weapon, forcing species to submit to our demands. Instead, we shared it freely because we believe the galaxy is better when everyone survives and prospers." Vorthak himself was sentenced to life imprisonment, but with a twist that only humans would have suggested. He would spend his remaining years working in medical research, helping to ensure that no weapon like the one he created could ever be developed again. "You're making me work to save lives," he said to the human judge who pronounced his sentence. "Yes," Judge Park replied. "Consider it an education in human values." The transformation of galactic civilization didn't happen overnight, but it happened. The new Galactic Assembly was built on principles that seemed radical after centuries of council rule. Equal representation for all species, transparent decision-making, protection for minority rights, and shared technological advancement. Yoon Ji-hai, the journalist who had started it all by risking her life to expose the truth, became the first human Secretary General of the Assembly. In her inaugural address, she spoke words that would be quoted for generations. "We gather not as conquerors and conquered, but as survivors who chose to save each other." The Council's greatest fear was that humanity would corrupt the galaxy. They were right. We have corrupted it with ideas they couldn't understand. Equality, compassion, and the radical notion that no species is better than any other. The changes were profound. Trade became truly free, with small species finally able to compete with larger ones on equal terms. Scientific knowledge was shared openly instead of being hoarded by the powerful. Cultural exchange flourished as species learned from each other without fear of being absorbed or dominated. Captain Lee Dae-ho, who had survived both his smuggling career and the cure process, found himself with a new job. He now ran medical supply runs to underserved worlds, carrying life-saving treatments to species that had never been priorities under Council rule. "Still a smuggler," he told his alien crew with a grin. "But now I smuggle hope instead of contraband." Wu Jin built the communication networks that connected the new assembly worlds. For the first time in galactic history, every species could communicate freely without council censorship or monitoring. Dr. So-Min established the Galactic Health Initiative, ensuring that the medical breakthroughs developed during the crisis would benefit everyone. The cure that had saved the galaxy became the foundation for treatments targeting dozens of diseases that affected multiple species. But perhaps the most important change was in how species viewed each other. The crisis had broken down barriers that had existed for millennia. Alien children played with human refugees in integrated schools. Mixed crews worked together on exploration missions. Interspecies friendships and even romances became commonplace. Memorial service took place 1 year after the surrender, on a new space station called New Harmony. Representatives from every known species gathered to remember those who had died during the attempted genocide. Not just humans, but the millions of aliens who had been caught up in the Council's final madness. Melody Songweaver gave the main address, her voice carrying across the galaxy through the new open communication networks. "We remember the dead not with anger, but with gratitude. Their sacrifice taught us that the galaxy's strength comes not from the power of the few, but from the cooperation of the many." The Council feared human influence because they understood, better than we did, that ideas of freedom and equality are contagious. They were right to fear. Their galaxy of fear and oppression could not survive contact with humanity's galaxy of hope and cooperation. She paused, looking out at the diverse crowd of beings who had come together to honor the fallen. But let us also remember that humans did not save the galaxy alone. Every species represented here contributed to our survival. The Etherians, who defied their government to support the truth. The Terran coalition, who fought beside human forces. The deep swimmers, who provided sanctuary. The bloomers, who shared their resources. Even members of the Saurian Empire, who chose conscience over loyalty. We are all here because we learned that our differences make us stronger, not weaker. We learned that true security comes not from eliminating threats, but from eliminating the fear that creates threats in the first place. In the crowd, former enemies sat side by side. Saurian refugees who had fled their homeworld rather than support. The genocide sat next to human veterans who had lost family in the attacks. Photonic Assembly members shared space with Terran Coalition warriors. Children of a dozen species played together while their parents listened to the ceremony. At the end of the memorial, they unveiled a simple monument, a sphere of black stone, containing samples of Earth from every world that had been attacked. But surrounding the dark center was a ring of crystal, each piece contributed by a different species, creating a rainbow of light that turned the monument from a symbol of death into a symbol of life. President Chen, now elderly but still strong, read the inscription. In memory of those who died in the darkness, in honor of those who chose to light a candle rather than curse that darkness, in hope for those who will inherit the galaxy we built together. As the ceremony ended, something remarkable happened. Representatives from the furthest reaches of the galaxy, species that had never participated in galactic politics, announced their desire to join the assembly. The crisis had shown them that isolation was no protection against madness, but cooperation could be protection against everything. The humans have given us more than they know, said a representative of the Crystalline Singers, a species that had avoided contact with other forms of life for millennia. They have shown us that reaching out is not weakness but strength. 5 years later, the galaxy looked nothing like it had under Council rule. Exploration missions ventured into previously forbidden regions, bringing back new knowledge and making contact with previously unknown species. Trade flowed freely, lifting the living standards of worlds that had been impoverished under the old system. Art and culture flourished as species shared their traditions and learned from each other. But perhaps most importantly, the galaxy had learned a lesson that would guide it for generations to come, that diversity was not a threat to be eliminated, but a resource to be celebrated. In schools across hundreds of worlds, children of all species learned the same lesson.